you threw away the motel key. I wish you never.
Hello, everybody.
You sound great.
Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast and, of course, our beautiful Facebook live stream. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. If I didn't say that, I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. And first off, Tom, we should explain
why you sound like
you also.
Great.
You're
yes,
not,
yeah. So the last time we recorded a podcast was after the Big Ten championship game. We talked about, hey, we're kind of exhausted right now.
It was like 11 hours ago.
Since then, we've each of us, not total, each of us gotten 2 hours of sleep. So we are rested, refreshed, and ready to go.
Yeah, and there should be, I'm not going to say a death penalty, but something very severe to the person in our hotel room who stayed the night before, who set their alarm for 6 a.m. and didn't unset it when they left, because when we finally turned the lights out last night at 5, or this morning at 5, and the alarm goes off at 6, that's no way to get 2 hours of sleep.
That's not. I thought, oh, that must be Gerd's alarm, and Gerd thought, oh, that must be Tom's alarm, and it went off for a couple minutes, and then I'm just like, this might be a third party's alarm.
somebody else is in here. We are doing this podcast because it's kind of an instant reaction, emergency type thing. With the college football playoff rankings being announced, Ohio State drops from number 1 to number 2. We'll be headed out west to Phoenix to play the Clemson Tigers, the number 3 Tigers, while LSU and Oklahoma play in Atlanta, and the over/under on that should be north of 120.
Yeah, that's going to get a little pointsy, I think. The Ohio State Clemson game could too, but I
believe that is a 63-point over/under.
I was just going to say that game seems like it could be played in the low 30s, and do you remember the Oklahoma-Georgia Rose Bowl a couple years ago? Like, it seems like the LSU-Oklahoma game could be somewhere in that range, or in the Alabama-Oklahoma range from a year ago. Actually, it turns out Oklahoma is generally very good at offense and very bad at defense, so they play a lot of those games.
Yeah, and that's the way it's been for a while. So today, we talked to Ryan Day, we talked to Mimi Landers and Jayshon Cornell and Josh Myers, and then at the end, we had an impromptu conversation with Gene Smith, athletic director, for about 15 minutes. There was this sense that maybe Ryan Day would use this as motivation. He didn't seem to really want to get into that. But I think there will be some usage of it, that the committee obviously disrespected you by bumping you down one after you win this third game in a row, which everybody talked again about how just darn difficult it was. So it was a toss-up, whether they were going to be 1 or 2. Last night, I said, probably in my heart, speaking over my head, was that Ohio State would be 1. You correctly said Ohio State would be 2. That is how it turned out. Tom, would you care to gloat?
I just would like to point out that the opposite of pessimism is realism. So, no, wait, optimism. See, 2 hours of sleep, remember? Opposite of optimism is realism. So, yeah, it just seemed like it was setting up very neatly for Ohio State to fall. And we didn't know for a fact, because you didn't really know, what is the separation between Ohio State and LSU. Gene Smith talked about this a little bit. He goes, you don't know because there's 13 people in that room. So are 7 people voting for Ohio State and 6 people voting for LSU? Or is it 10 and 3? And then in their minds, in the minds of those 7 people voting for Ohio State, is Ohio State way ahead of LSU? Or is it just a little bit ahead, where a win over Georgia? And it was absolutely an impressive win for LSU on Saturday, where you get to the point where a win like that could vault them over Ohio State. I don't have any issue with Ohio State being number 2. I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing. You can look at the facts, you can look at the stats, and say, hey, there's a case to be made. I have a real issue with some of the narrative around this on Saturday, where it was just, there's no question. There's absolutely no question. And then, once all of the ESPN personalities have kind of put that out into the universe, then today, during the pre-show, it was like, oh, I don't know. How's it? They are right there. Like Chris Fowler tweeted sometime Saturday night about, there's no question. You couldn't be clearer. And then, Sunday after the votes are in, it's very close. It's razor
after the
thin.
damage is done,
yeah, okay.
basically.
Yeah, so, that's what I have more of an issue with, people pretending this was a real clear. Because that's like egg followers on Twitter with 7 followers who want to tell you that Ohio State would go 8-4 against LSU's schedule, or LSU would go 8-4 against Ohio. No, you're dumb. Stop. But you shouldn't have that level of stupidity on national TV.
Speaking of that, I am starting to get more mentions from like LSU and Clemson fans.
You can tell because the words are often
right,
misspelled.
and this is not going to be a good few weeks. Maybe just embrace it. Just go full force in insulting them. The whole Josh Myers even said, we're fighting for the North. He didn't say those exact words. That's me paraphrasing. But if we just like embrace it and say like, hey, the South.
Hey, it's not just your accents that make you sound stupid. It's the words you're saying too.
Well, I mean, you put those two together, and you are a national laughing stock. But Tom, some of the people who listen and watch this may be from the South, so
not you. You say smart words and you say them and with that adorable accent.
Yes.
This is different.
This is much different. So Ohio State, Clemson, we will probably talk about how this matches up coming down in the next few weeks. We've got some time.
In the 17 podcasts we will record between now and December 28th.
We're going to have to figure that one out. I thought they should have. I thought they did enough to be number one. You put 27 in a row on Wisconsin in that second half. Georgia finishing number 5 is a bleeping joke. I don't know who you put there. But to drop one spot from that loss.
Right, well, yeah, Georgia got absolutely clobbered. And if you were super impressed with LSU and how badly they blew the doors off Georgia, that means Georgia no longer has doors. So that should be reflected in the playoff rankings. And this is the second year that a 2-loss, non-conference champion Georgia has been 5th. Like, what is that based on?
Yeah.
What on earth is that based on?
And if you watch them at all this year, they never looked great. It seems like they rose, one, because they are Georgia and they're at the SEC, and they weren't losing, but
except for the game they lost. But yes, go on.
That South Carolina game that
at home
quickly got discarded because Georgia SEC and they beat a team. They're kind of. I saw somebody compare them to like they're the SEC's Wisconsin. But
that's not true because Wisconsin wins bowl games.
Right. I don't get it with Georgia. I think they want them to be something more than they are, and they're just trying to put them there and say they're up there with Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State because
look, they played big dumb 2009 Nick Saban football. They must be great. Like no, the rest of the sport has moved beyond that, and now they're just the team that plays big dumb rock fight football and loses when they play anyone with better talent.
They have great defense.
They do. Sort of.
As long as you are not playing a good offense, there are a few defenses better than Georgia.
Their defense was good. Their defense was very solid this year, but if in the same way that Ohio State obviously has a very good defense. If Ohio State gives up 37 points to LSU, if they play in the national championship game, do you think the narrative is going to be what a great game and what a great defense Ohio State had?
No.
Probably not.
No, it would be exposed.
Yes.
Something of that nature, of which, that's to be expected. The Clemson game from 2016 was brought up quite a bit today. Robert Landers and Jayshon Cornell were both on that team, both played. Josh Myers was not on that team, so didn't have, he watched it alone in a hotel room.
Yes. His brother played for Kentucky at that point, so they were at some kind of bowl game somewhere.
Yep. So
probably the Music City Bowl if it was Kentucky in that era. Or the BBVA Compass Bowl in Birmingham.
Jeez, dude, look at that.
Hey, I know my bad.
Going out to Phoenix, we'll get back to the other stuff. We could get a chance to watch 2 bowl games with. When will that come out today?
The Cheez-It Bowl will come out today. The Cheez-It Bowl is the night before the Fiesta Bowl. And
Can Michigan be in that game?
If the world is not a beautiful enough place for that. If you don't remember the Cheez-It Bowl last year, that was literally the worst bowl game in the history of the world. It was TCU and
we watched it
Cal in
California.
Granddad's Lounge at the
Yes.
Rose Bowl. Yes,
It was so terrible.
it was just magically terrible.
Yeah.
And just to do a quick diversion, 2017 we went to the Cotton Bowl and we drove back because we hate ourselves.
Yeah.
And we were driving right through Memphis as the Liberty Bowl was going on, and it was an absolute classic Memphis Iowa State Liberty Bowl. We were going through like middle of the third quarter. I was like, why don't we have to stop for lunch anyway? Why don't we stop? We didn't get to stop.
Right.
Now look at me.
you-
Look at me. I'm the captain now. We're going to the Cheez-It Bowl.
And we'll be able to just take a shuttle, I assume.
Maybe. It doesn't matter. And guess what? Even if we don't, we should get credentialed. But even if we don't get credentialed,
That's good.
we could. I mean, tickets might be cheaper than credentials at this point. We'll have to see who's in that game.
Now I'm excited to see who is in it, and it's going to be something terrible like Connecticut and Central Michigan.
I'm quite certain UConn is not bowl eligible this season.
Um,
But that's enough Cheez-It Bowl talk.
Yes,
At least for now. We'll do a Cheez-It Bowl instant reaction podcast.
We've got
Yes.
2 or 3 weeks of Cheez-It Bowl talk.
Yes.
We were talking about Clemson and Ryan Day using that as motivation. He's like, the 31-0, and he's like, we'll show it as like proof of life, or like here's an example of Clemson, or reference, basically, I think is what he said. But these are 2 different teams. Ohio State is a completely different program.
They have an offensive coordinator this year.
That is true. Actually, they've got 3. If you want to throw everybody in there,
I mean, more than 0 is, I
Yes.
guess, the key point there. Yes.
yes, they have 3 this year, which or even more, which would be like 4 more than that the 2016
Yes.
team had. So there is that. I think it'll be fun to write about, for us to talk about, for fans to maybe want some revenge. But really, the guys who were impacted on that game were redshirt freshmen who weren't really playing. I think BB played.
Right. BB Landers, Jay-Sean Cornell talked a little bit about it today.
But
But
it's like,
not,
Brandon Bowen wasn't playing in that game. Justin Hilliard wasn't playing. I mean, so it's not something that, oh man, I've been wanting this. I've been wanting revenge on Clemson for a long time. No, I think as Jay-Sean Cornell, they were asked, what was it like in the locker room afterwards? Cornell's like, I have no recollection. I pushed it out of my brain, and BB was
like, oh, I know, I remember. Boy, it wasn't good. It was not good. And he said, they put a lot of effort into that. That they didn't come in like kind of coasting in. Like they put a lot of effort in that game. And he said once 31-0 happens, you kind of go back and you're looking at everything like what did we not do to get to this point? And the interesting storyline, and this is something I'm sure that one of us will write about this week, is that game got Tim Beck and Ed Warner fired. And when Tim Beck and Ed Warner got fired, they Urban Meyer hired some dude from the NFL,
scrappy young
with a lustrous thick head of hair named Ryan something or other. I don't remember. It doesn't matter.
Whatever happened to that guy?
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing. Probably back in the NFL, wasting his life. Who's to say? I mean, this is like a little bit of a full circle thing.
Yep,
I mean,
very much so.
Each of these seasons kind of has a narrative that a lot of times you don't figure out until
that's the game that got him hired.
Far later into the season. You're kind of getting the circle of life here a little bit. That
Can you sing that?
I could sing that.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
This is a good time to explain the difference between can I and will I.
Gotcha.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, this is like 2014. You and John Prentice wrote a book called The Thrilogy, which, as of 2 nights ago, at that point in that season, like the whole theme of that book, no one had any idea that the next 3 games are going to go the way they did.
Yeah.
So, now that this is, maybe this is kind of developing as the theme of this season.
Going back to that 2016 game where a couple days before, the Clemson defenders were just talking about like really disrespectful of JT Barrett. Not disrespectful, just like, we are not concerned about him, basically. And they were right.
Mm-hmm. They had correctly read the room.
Yes. And so I remember talking to Malik Hooker after the game in the locker room, like, because the defense did enough to win that game. They there was a pick 6 in there, so the defense can only hold up for so long against Deshaun Watson when the offense is not moving the ball. But that was because Urban Meyer said afterwards, this will never happen again, referring to a shutout. He was right. You wonder what would have happened if he would have hired Ryan Day when he wanted to, like after Tom Herman left.
Yeah.
Probably not. Clemson would be looking for revenge.
Well, and that maybe. And the other thing that's kind of interesting there is, okay, if Ryan Day has a couple good years at Ohio State, where is Ryan Day the head coach? Does Ryan Day go head coach?
He's at Florida State right now.
Yeah. I mean,
Boston College. I don't know.
He might be the head coach at Texas because. Okay. We don't need to dive too deep into the.
Are there any questions to answer?
I've seen kind of a scrolling list of objections to my characterization of Southern accents. So that's been kind of one thing. We'll get into some of that later.
We got 3 weeks to do that.
Yeah, we've got loads of time.
We could deal with that.
I think that the one thing that was sort of touched on a little bit was Clemson has playoff experience. Like they played in the playoff basically each of the last few years, played in the national championship game. This is not going to be like a crazy big stage for Clemson.
No.
For Ohio State, this is a little bit new for most of those guys. And you're playing at Ohio State, like a large horde of media is not going to scare you. Playing on national TV is not going to scare you. But maybe Justin Fields was a little nervous at the Big Ten championship game. We talked about that a little bit after the game. Was that nerves? Was that just being a little off platform because of his knee? There's some things that you can look at from that perspective with Clemson's experience as a potential something that might be a little of an issue for Ohio State.
I would counter that with Ohio State has been in the playoffs for the last 3 weeks.
That's true.
Ryan Day has talked about this being March Madness, and you've got Penn State, you've got Michigan, you've got Wisconsin. Now, sure, they arguably could have lost any of those and still gone on to what they're doing, but that's not the mentality they went into the games with.
Right.
And they're going in with the mentality of we have to win each of these games, and you have to prepare for each one because there's something bigger coming. Like this last game against Wisconsin pretty much emptied their tank.
Yeah.
And now they've got to refill. And that's how they set it out with they made the players aware of you've got these 3 games, this is what we're going to do. And they made it through, and now you set up a new plan. And you'll have much more time between this next game and the one after if you win it. But Ryan Day has done a solid job of preparing his players for what is coming.
Yeah. And it was interesting. This is something that got brought up during the Gene Smith interview. Ohio State in 2006, when they beat Michigan, that 1-2 game, it was 51 days between that and the national championship game against Florida. Like, that's too much time.
Yeah.
This is basically 3 weeks. I mean, it's 3 weeks from tonight, actually, right? Or 3 weeks from Saturday night. So 21 days between those two. So exactly 3 weeks. That's not like a normal bowl practice amount of time. Ryan Day said they're basically going to treat it like it's almost like they're going to do a game week. They're going home right now. The coaches are out recruiting. They're going to do a game week of practice.
Treat this like a bye week, right?
Yeah, this is like a bye week. They're going to do like 1 week of game practice. Let the players go home for a couple days. Just kind of do an early Christmas, and then come back, and then you're doing your game week prep. Potentially starting here and then going out to Phoenix. And the Buckeyes fly out there on the 23rd, correct?
22nd.
22nd, okay.
So they'll get out there on the 22nd. That's the first availability with the coaches and maybe a player or two. Then I think nothing on the 23rd, and then 24th is a press conference. And then, nothing on the 25th.
Why? What's going on the 25th?
People are booked, and then 26th, things will get crazy until the 28th.
Yeah, 26th, 27th, 28th is when the rubber kind of really hits the road. Yeah. We were sitting there watching the playoff selection show with our tickets to Phoenix books because we had made plans for Atlanta, and it was like, okay, if this doesn't happen, then now we're going to have to change to Phoenix. We sat there with tickets booked, fingers poised above the submit button.
Because the minute the location is announced and the prices just go
right up.
Yeah. And so we got in, we've got our tickets, and I'm I wanted to go to Atlanta because it's easier, but Phoenix is pretty fun.
It's high 60s and sunny the next, basically like most of this week.
We can't like talk a whole bunch about that because it makes people mad.
It's not snowing here. It's fine.
It's like 48 out. That's
balmy.
Pretty good, yeah.
That's like shorts weather.
It pretty much is.
All right, let's scroll through some questions real quick.
Holy cow.
Well, we got a lot. Bob asks, where's Caroline? Caroline's here for our pregame shows.
Yes.
Today she's
getting back from
Indy. We traveled separately.
Yeah.
So yes, we
sorry
to disappoint you. It's just us today. Clint says the goalposts are on casters, not secured with concrete. The goalposts presumably for the college football playoff committee in terms of what constitutes number one. I mean,
well, yeah, they'll have their teleconference, I think, in about an hour. I'll try to jump on that. But at this point, their logic and whatever is what it is. And they'll say they have been so cloudy in what they've said at times so that they don't get really trapped into stuff. But I think they have been trapped into how much they liked Ohio State.
Yeah.
And I think they're just going to put too much stock in LSU's defense the last 3 weeks, ignoring what Ohio State has done in the last 3 weeks, going through what they went through. They're going to have a difficult time like justifying this, I think.
Talking about what Ohio State went through the last 3 weeks, this is kind of the flip side of what we talked about earlier with Clemson having had playoff experience and having been tested in that area. Clemson hasn't played anybody this year. And that is not a shot at Clemson. Clemson is a very good team. When I did what teams would Ohio State like to face in the playoff, Clemson was at the bottom of the list because Clemson is a very good team.
They even played Texas A&M and South Carolina.
Yes.
So
Clemson playing no one is a function of the ACC being straight trash this year and Texas A&M being not good and South Carolina being not good. It wasn't even like they tried to schedule a terrible schedule. They just didn't play anybody.
Now, when you say the ACC is straight trash, would you say the SEC West is crooked trash?
That would, the SEC West probably has some better teams, but also, there's probably some truth to that as well.
Thank you. That's all I'm
ways.
asking. Just, tell me I'm right sometimes.
Parker says Oregon should have been 5th over Georgia, have to honor the choice to play Auburn out of conference despite a loss. If that's anyone else, Oregon is a 1-loss champion, likely in the CFP, 2-loss conference champion, and not ranked ahead of a 2-loss non-champion. All you need to know.
Well, yeah, exactly. Georgia.
Yeah, you're incentivizing all the bad things that you don't want. You claim you want teams to play good teams out of conference, and then if Oregon is probably in with if they don't lose to Arizona State or they don't lose to Auburn. Yeah, either one of those they're probably in.
And this was an opportunity for the committee to kind of get past the whole SEC bias. Gene Smith was asked about, does the committee have an SEC bias? When it's a meaningless vote like that, and you put Georgia at 5, you're almost confirming these conspiracy theories.
Right. Yeah, because Georgia did. What's Georgia's best win this year? Florida, which was okay. Florida's fine, but it's like they have one win that's as good as Penn State's win over Michigan.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool, I guess. But yeah, and they were completely non-competitive.
I'm tired of Florida too. That's another. Who is Florida beating? They lose to like LSU and Georgia and.
Did they beat Auburn this year?
Give those guys quality wins.
I think they beat Auburn.
Auburn's another one.
Well, yes.
But all right, let's forget it.
Yeah, the SEC circle of everyone is good, and therefore everyone has quality wins. Yes, that's probably a whole separate
They played
show.
musical chairs with like extra chairs. Like the chairs never run out. Yes, Caroline is not here. Yes, scroll.
All right, let's see. Clint asks, who should feel more disrespected, Clemson or Ohio State? Ohio State being number 2, and they're a 2-point underdog. There was like an initial, Ohio State opened as a 1-point favorite, and I kind of looked at that and went, I don't think that's probably going to last very long. And then immediately it swung to 2 points, Clemson -2.
I got an email from Bet Online a couple weeks ago where it was already like prospective matchups, and Clemson was already 2.5 points favored over Ohio State, so it didn't surprise me that it's already moving that way. Who should feel more disrespected? Dabo sure seems like he's more interested in feeding that to his team
Yeah.
rather than Ryan Day. So maybe...
I'm guessing that Ohio State's going to hear a little bit about that. Dabo does it through the media, and I think Ryan Day does it through behind closed doors. And that's, the from a functional point of view, the team's consumption, they're getting it either way.
Yeah.
It's a little obnoxious the way Dabo does it. Like it's
just a little.
I mean,
he's doing it while he's sliding down the slide.
Right. It's just
we should be number one.
Yeah, and I think he said that I believe he said today that no defending national champion had been started number one and then fallen to number three. It's like that actually happened like 5 years ago to Florida State. They were defending national champions, started one, finished third, got murdered by Oregon in the Rose Bowl.
I thought while we were talking to Gene Smith, Doug Lesmerises of Cleveland.com brought up an interesting point. If the BCS was still going on today, Ohio State would possibly have been left out because Clemson is that defending champ, and AP voters and coaches, they love them some SEC with LSU. And that, could you imagine Ohio State being left out and being 13-0,
going to the Rose Bowl to play Oregon as the number 3 team, and and then trying to beat Oregon by 90 points, so that if the other national championship game is close,
maybe
you
the
can
AP will give you
split
something or whatever it was.
Can you imagine having all of your national championships hopes hanging on winning the Rose Bowl and stealing the AP vote, and having that be your only national championship in the last 70 years?
Would you even,
hypothetically,
why would you even display something like that?
I don't know.
No, that's something you put in that would be a source of embarrassment for like blue blood programs. Like, we don't want this. I mean, put that in the closet, and not the closet in the front room, the closet in the back room where we have the attic, and actually put it up in the attic, and the closet in the attic. I don't want to see that thing.
That's maybe a sub wall, like
right. That's
on the back,
where we hide the boy that we raised that turned out off, and we don't we feed him fish heads.
Yes, Bart's secret twin. Yes. Just wanted to make sure we were spelling that out a little bit, because otherwise that could have been taken a real weird. Yes. As always, if you don't understand what we're talking about, I'm sure it's some old Simpsons something. Yes. LT Ironman Trend says he actually wants Clemson first chance for a win.
What position do you play? No, I'm just messing with you, LT.
There's an argument there that you have more time to try and scheme up against.
Yeah, that's true.
And you have your defensive backs healthy. You have, they have T. Higgins, Justin Ross. Like, this is going to be, and Trevor Lawrence, pretty good quarterback. And those defensive backs are going to be challenged. Ohio State needs them healthy, needs them like ready to go. I don't know that you necessarily want Chad Morris to have 3 weeks to scheme against your team, but Ohio State's got some pretty good.
Brent Venables?
Sorry, not Chad Morris. Brent Venables. Yeah, Chad Morris hasn't been there in 7 years.
Is he back as a QC analyst or something?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. No. Possibly.
I think that's an interesting point. It's kind of similar to 2014 playing Alabama first, and then you get the easier opponent afterward.
Yeah.
They can really lock in on Clemson right now, and if you can beat Clemson, then you should probably be able to beat whoever will be coming up next.
And there's less of a differentiation this year than there was in the past, because this year it's like 3 weeks, and then it's basically, I think, 2 full weeks between the semifinals and the finals. Before, it was like a month and like a week. Yeah. So it's just the way the year falls this year, it kind of splits up a little differently. Clint wants to know what's Clemson's record in any other conference. Well,
that's 13-0.
I think there's.
I think they're really good.
I think they're really good, and they had the one real lousy game against North Carolina, and if you do that at Penn State instead of North Carolina, then you lose. But Clemson, I think people, if you're just looking at Clemson's scores this year, and it's like, they just beat a bunch of teams like 35-14. That's not that impressive. Dabo seems like he'll get up a couple touchdowns and then just really throttle down, and it just don't, keep guys healthy. Don't.
Did they score 62 yesterday?
I think it was 62-17 against. They did not throttle down against Virginia.
He wanted to stay at number 3.
Yeah. So don't read too much into those just top line scores, because they looked terrible at times in the beginning of the year. They looked like the 2015 Buckeyes.
That's
and then
what
you
I
had
think
that
to.
North Carolina game, which was, I think, the same week as the
It was a wake-up call
Nebraska game.
because they've destroyed everybody since.
Yes.
They haven't played anybody.
Yes, that served the same function as the 2015 Michigan State game did for the Buckeyes, where they were just kind of sleepwalking all year. They got punched in the face. Clemson didn't lose. Ohio State lost. Clemson almost lost. And then that woke up Ohio State. And
but
then
they only had one more game.
Right. They just completely drilled Michigan and then
now, if they'd
beat
had
up on
7 more games like Clemson did, they would have been
They
in the
might
playoffs.
have gotten in the playoffs, exactly. Yes, Clint, that's why we skipped your question. Sometimes we get questions we can't use about Southern stereotypes.
Oh, jeez. Way to go down that rabbit hole.
Mark says,
which is something they also do in the South.
Mark says, how will the assistant coaches interviewing for other jobs affect game prep and team chemistry?
Well, there's time to get all of that done. I mean, but also, didn't Ryan Day said, like, let's focus on this team first.
Yeah.
And, if a team is really hot and bothered to have you as their head coach, they will wait.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, then they'll move on. But I think a team like the schools that are coming after guys right now, I think the coaches can either do better or make them wait. If Colorado State is interested in Tony Alford, it's because Tony Alford is an alum. He's very tied to the program, and if they really want him, they will wait. But also, it could be one of those things where Tony Alford doesn't take much convincing. Like, I think this is perfect for us. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. But right now, I've got to do Ohio State, and we'll worry about recruiting. But Tom Herman was able to do it. Yeah, recruiting for Houston while preparing for Alabama and Oregon. So, but they didn't have the early signing period.
Right. Well, that changes things a lot. Yeah,
it's just really, really hectic. Ryan Day today trying to talk to him, and Jerry Emick, the SID, is like, well, we're going to have him for not that much time because he has to go and recruit because they were not out recruiting last week because they're preparing for Wisconsin. And so now you've got signing day in what? Week and a half?
Week and a half. It's on the 18th this year, I think.
And now the good thing is you have like all of these Ohio State commits saying, don't worry about us. Yeah. Like I saw G. Scott's dad say, don't come out here. Yeah. Go get us some teammates, basically.
And I mean, Ohio State's class is basically full. Yep. Like they might add 1, possibly 2 more kids, but I mean, maybe a quarterback, maybe another defensive lineman or
possibly
something, possibly running back. But I mean, the guys who are committed have been committed forever. Last year you had kind of Jordan Battle where we had just kind of heard forever and a day that he was like, well, he's probably not going to sign. You haven't heard that with any of the kids this year. So that's a help for Ohio State that they don't have to worry about that stuff. This is a big recruiting time. This is a big recruiting time of the year. Everyone is on the road this week. Gene Smith said that they are like really recruiting nationally. I think he said they have 2 guys on the road in California this week, and there's someone else who I think he said was in New York. And then is going to go to California. Like they're going to have 3 guys on the road in California this week. Like that's
and he said that's unheard of at Ohio State.
Yeah, that's crazy because it's the time. It's the distance, it's the expense. I mean, all of it. But they obviously, I mean, that is when there was some uncertainty and flux at Georgia, kind of towards the end of the Mark Richt era. They really hit Georgia hard and brought in Raekwon McMillan, Von Bell, those guys. Now you've got flux at USC, flux at UCLA. You go out there and you go hit up, you bring in the next generations of Wyatt Davises and Chris Olaves.
And I believe I saw Urban Meyer talking about that on Fox a few weeks back. Like, this is something that you do. Mm-hmm. If there's some stuff going on there, you go after those schools or you go after those states. And, Urban has said in the past, like, we're not going to go out to California unless there's mutual interest. We're not just going to go, flipping over rocks and looking for stuff. The rocks have to call. I don't know if that was his actual, word usage, but basically it's a two-way street. Not the kind of two-way street that Don Brown thinks of, where it's only a one-way street.
Yeah. No, that's dead end. Clint wants to know, what position group do we see as the strength for Ohio State against Clemson? And where will Ohio State be exposed by Clemson?
I need more time. I haven't watched much Clemson.
I've watched enough Clemson to know that I don't feel real great about Ohio State's pass pro against their defensive line.
I mean, against who would you feel great? Right
I mean, Oklahoma.
but Josh Myers also said they need time to get healed up.
Yes. Yep.
Ryan Day said it's not so much physically, but it's emotionally and spiritually.
Yes.
And just
mentally.
Mentally, yeah. And just get back into feeling well, feeling great. Mm-hmm. I think they all need that. But again, yeah, that'll be my biggest concern. That's really my only concern with this team is protection, and then Justin Fields' knee.
Yeah, and as far as Clemson, I don't know that there's a position group that jumps out to me necessarily.
Travis
I think
Etienne.
For being
he's good, but yeah.
I mean, in terms of where Clemson might have a concern is they haven't played a 4-quarter game against anyone that's even remotely in Ohio State's caliber. So, okay, first time you get down by a couple scores, are they going to freak out? They really haven't. Yeah. They killed Alabama last year. They weren't down against Alabama. They were kind of in a rock fight for the first quarter, but then they pulled away and it was never close. If Ohio State can jump on them, how do they respond? Do they have guys who are kind of halfway out the door to the NFL? Maybe. I mean, that's the issue with having real talented teams. Like if you get far behind and it's like, oh, this might be over, then our guys sort of shutting it down. Probably not, but I mean, Clemson's pretty good, so there's a limited number of places where they would have.
And they don't
concern.
have last year's defensive line, so I think that obviously helps Ohio State. But it'll be interesting to see as we watch more of Clemson, just to see what we think of them.
Clint wants to know, will Ryan Day come up with trick plays for Clemson? I mean, haven't seen a need to be over creative. I mean, they have broken them out when they've needed them. I'm sure that they've got some stuff.
They'll have something, yeah.
That's another thing that's kind of an interesting angle to this is Clemson hasn't played very many close games, so they probably have a whole bunch of stuff that they're holding back. Yeah. Ohio State's had 3 weeks in a row where it's like, well, break glass in case of emergency. You're burning through more of your good ideas than Clemson probably has the last few weeks. So.
But then, with Clemson, when do they pull something out, and why? Do you want to catch somebody off guard, or do you wait until you need it? Do you do it when you want it, or do you do it when you need it? Ohio State has done it both times. Like I think the fake punt, right? They felt they kind of needed it then. Onside kick, they did it because they wanted to. So it just depends on how you're feeling, and as Ryan Day says, that's the art of coaching.
Yes. Clint says, does Ryan Day get us a surprise commit during this week? I mean, I don't know how surprised.
Yeah, I
mean there are names.
Kind of know all of the names.
You've heard the names. Yeah. I mean, C.J. Stroud, John Robinson.
Yeah, Stroud is like the biggest guy out there right now. Kind of the last maybe big time quarterback still out there, and a guy who was kind of not super thrilled that he was been so backburnered by a lot of schools, including Ohio State and including Michigan, who are maybe his 2 biggest suitors at this point. I think Ohio State needs him more than Michigan does, even though Michigan has lost their quarterback commit from the 2020 class. But he would be very big for Ohio State just for the numbers, especially if Justin Fields, if this is a chronic knee issue, this normal knee problem that he has that eventually goes away within a few weeks. If it is a chronic problem, it would be nice to have more scholarship quarterbacks, Tom.
Yes, it would be nice for them to have more scholarship quarterbacks no matter what, because right now they have 3 and one of them is leaving. So, Roman says, did Wyatt Davis really dislocate his shoulder last night? If so, will he recover fully by the Clemson game?
He played. He came back. Now, if you watch that play, I thought it was a knee or an ankle or something. He got rolled up. He hit that ground, hit his shoulder on the ground, and
it was his shoulder, and as we were leaving the locker room, he said something, and it wasn't specifically, but I just heard him talking to someone else, and it made me think that it probably was something along that dislocation kind of line. As far as how is he 100% for, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. There are degrees, I think, of dislocation and or shoulder separation or whatever. I don't know.
I believe, are they grades or degrees? I believe it's a grade.
Grade, but that's shoulder separation, not shoulder dislocation. So this is like doctor. I've watched football for long enough, and I've kind of heard about these injuries. Speaking,
anybody who has seen Lethal Weapon
that's
knows.
True. Just whack it against the door frame.
Exactly, or if you have a filing cabinet, perhaps a wall where the door is open and you can actually get in there. Very simple. That's probably what they do. They had the medical tent. They just bring in a filing cabinet. They wheel one in, and then they just throw Wyatt Davis up against it, and then they trot him back out there.
Do you think that it's like a special medical filing cabinet, where it's like wrapped up in this sterile until opening kind of things?
Yeah, definitely.
Clinton says, "Don't see us Ohio State walking into this one. Just went through a grinder with the ending schedule." I mean that certainly made a lot of sense when guys were talking about that last night. That just, it wasn't that they overlooked Wisconsin. It was just, hey, this is 3 weeks in a row, and you're kind of beat up, you're kind of tired, and it's hard to be up every single week when you're playing good teams every single week.
Take this podcast for instance. Last night's was okay. This right after it, it's like you can't just keep doing excellent. Sometimes the excellent, the quality falls off. And it's not because we're not great at this. It's because we've just done a lot of them.
Is that why?
That is why.
LTI Man Trans says he doesn't think Trevor Lawrence can throw accurately enough to hurt Ohio
I'm interested
State.
to see that battle because those very good wide receivers, Trevor Lawrence needs to be on, and he can be on. But Chase Young has been quiet these last couple of games, and he needs to stop being quiet.
Yeah. Well, and what is Clemson going to do to neutralize him? Are they going to go with the hug for you plan that Ohio State has kind of seen?
They won't be Big Ten refs, I assume. So we'll
probably
maybe refs who call holding.
Maybe. I mean,
dare to dream.
Wouldn't that be a thing? And there's just a lot of guys who get Jeff Okudah 100% healthy, get Sean Wade 100% healthy, get Damon Arnett. Maybe Damon Arnett's wrist is feeling better after Baron Browning. We saw him in a cast, and I mean, there's a lot of guys who are banged up, and football is a physical game. You're playing in the Big Ten, which is a physical league. You've just played 3 very physical games all in a row. This is going to be the time when you just want to rest, get your body feeling better. I mean, it's like a pitcher at the end of the season. Every pitcher's arm is hurting at the end of the season. That's just it's the degree of how much. And then you take a little time off, and then when you start throwing again, your arm feels great. If Ohio State has a chance to take a little time off now, they're going to be in the weight room. They're not just going to be sitting eating sandwiches. They're going to be in the weight room. They're going to be active doing stuff, but they're not banging into each other. That probably is going to make a big difference in terms of what they look like coming out for that Fiesta Bowl.
One other topic not related to this, Brendan White. Ryan Day was asking about Brendan White not being at the game, and he said he was handling personal issues.
Yes, which is extremely vague, which could...
So just wanted to pass that along.
Yeah, so he was not there, and we had not gotten an official word as to what that could be. But yeah, it's... personal issues can be just about anything. So we don't know much more than we knew last night, but we figured we'd pass it along to you.
There you go. Is that it?
I think that's it.
All right. You know what? I think this went pretty well, considering what we're doing. So I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. We will have... When are we going to do another show again?
Yeah, we'll have to have some sort of editorial meeting at some point because we have no more Ryan Day, no more Buckeyes for a week. So the week of December 9th, we have nothing. So it's like a week from Monday. I think we start getting players and coaches again. So we'll probably do something at some point this week just to kind of touch base and all that. But we'll definitely not be on our 4 to 5 week, including Patreon shows schedule that we've been on the last few weeks.
We need to recharge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're tired. I've dislocated many things, and
So I have to go pick up a filing cabinet on the way home and take care of the shoulder issue, and then maybe a nap.
Maybe. Oh man, sleep.
Yeah.
That's where I'm a Viking.
Simpsons. All right, so thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you later.
Well, she threw away the motel key. I wish it never meant nothing to me. Say you will, now say you will. Oh yeah. Say you will, now say you will. If you tell me that tomorrow's alright, we could steal a car and leave tonight. Cause I know things just haven't been right. This feeling's getting stronger. I can't take it any longer. Say you will, now say you will. Oh yeah. Say you will, now say you will. If you tell me that tomorrow's alright, we can steal a car and leave tonight. Well, I came in for a goodbye kiss, but I could never have imagined this. Say you will, now say you will. Oh yeah. Say you will, now say you will. Say you will, now say you will. If you tell me that tomorrow